Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Star Trek Picard is the 10-part CBS Access show that used the character of Captain Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation and gave him his own show 20 years down the line. It's been going for about 10 episodes now, and this is it. This is the end, the finale. So let's get into it. Episode 10, Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2, starts out with Chad Romulan, and he's flailing all his way to the Borg cube, sneaking in to find his sister waiting for him, because I guess she never beamed out after last time. Okay. And they've got a plan, you see. They're going to use bombs to blow up the antenna and stop the robots from calling in the super future robots. So the pair of them are like, cheerio, and then he's off, and he's followed by the elf ninja boy, and he leaves his sister there to get on with trying to get the cube's guns working again. But unfortunately for her, 7 of 9 manages to find her, and they have a wee bit of a tussle, and 7 ends up booting her down the middle of the cube to her doom. Oh well. And back on the Normandy, the Serenity, or the Serenity, whatever it's called, Raffi and Rios are chatting about fixing the ship, using this little MacGuffin that they got from the robots, and it works by imagining whatever it is you want it to do, and it just does it. I'm sure something like that won't be really handy later on in a way that never comes up again after this episode. And anyway, they get disturbed by Chad tossing a bunch of stones at the ship, and he says, hey, I want to speak to you because, I could have just blown you up with grenades, but, let's have a parley. So they end up talking, and he agrees to help them stop the robots with a clever gambit, and then the elf ninja guy turns up as well, but they calm him down. And they pretend that they're actually taking Chad back to jail, and the robot guards let them in, and they take all their guns, but not Rios's football. And then they wander right up to where the main stuff's going on and watch, and everyone's fine. And then Dr. Soong Jr. walks up and he chats to evil Robot Lassie. And then he ends up zapping her with a taser, because earlier on he looked at the memories of the dead Robot Lassie and saw that evil Soji was the one that killed her. And because of that, he then realised that she was wrong about wanting to wipe out all of humanity. Because everybody on the show is some kind of child and has the intelligence of a wally duck. So they're trying to stop the thing, but Soji won't move, and finally Rios is like, oh well, fuck it, and he just throws a grenade. And she grabs it, and well, yeah, that's it. But then luckily, elsewhere, Picard and Agnes have managed to escape to the Normandy, narrowly missing the rest of the crew, and then they zoom up into space to meet the Romulan fleet. And that blows up all the space orchids, but luckily Agnes manages to pick up the imagination MacGuffin while they're talking about making hundreds of hologram decoys. And, oh look, that worked. Yeah, this is like CBeebies level of stuff happening on a Star Trek show, well done. So that manages to distract the Romulans just long enough for the actual Federation to arrive. And yeah, the Federation are going to help out, because it turns out that they're actually now on the side of the robots, somehow. But it doesn't matter, because Soji sets off the sky beam. Yeah, there's a sky beam in there. And then Picard realises the only way he can sort that out is to talk to her. But his space dementia starts acting him up, and apparently it's going to get him dead really quick all of a sudden, because convenience, plotting and timing. And then Agnes gives him a shot of a super die faster thing, but it'll manage to make him lucid for just a few more minutes. And Picard convinces Soji to turn off the beacon and stop the super robots, and she does, and it fixes everything. And then the Romulans go home, and the Federation are convinced that robots are good, and sadly, Picard falls off his chair and he's really bad all over, and he's done for. So Soji says, oh quick, beam him down here. So they do, and they beam him to the town square instead of the med bay. Okay. And then he has a bit of a heartfelt goodbye with all of these people who, frankly, he doesn't really know that well, and neither did the audience, and then he dies. Oh. And everyone's a bit sad. Look how total sad these pair are. I was convinced. But yeah, then he wakes up and he's in a room with Data. And Data's all like, yeah, this isn't heaven by the way, it's a simulation. And they chat about death and sacrifice, and then they actually get to say the little goodbye that they never got to have. And then Picard leaves, and he goes into that robot skeleton body that they saw last week. And then he wakes up and they tell him that yeah, the body's great, but it's set to be exactly as old as he was, and exactly as infirm, and it'll probably die around the same time. Great. And then he mercifully decides to let Data die in peace by turning off the simulation. And finally the crew all pair up, and then they fly off into space, and I suppose off into season 2. If it ever happens. So what do I think? Well, I'm going to give you my positive thoughts on the episode first, because it's not going to take me that long. But, I don't want to be bad about this. So let's start by giving the credit to the actors for actually emoting in some scenes and doing a bit of work. And all the way through the show, they've actually tried their best and put a decent amount of effort into things. Most of them. Not all. But yeah. And they actually did give Picard this, dying scene, and they put effort into it. And Patrick Stewart actually does a really good death scene. He does Shakespeare, so he knows what he's doing. But I'd also like to commend this episode on some really great looking moments, like the Borg cube, in the water. That was great. It looked amazing. And there was absolutely great cinematography, and some of the effects work was spectacular. I mean, it's been spectacular in Discovery, it's been spectacular in this. It's just a really good looking show, and it's movie level good special effects, and that side of it has never been in question. But also, kudos to the show for not ending in a big, massive shooty fight. I mean, this is surprising because even the guys at Red Letter Media, they predicted this would end in a massive fight, something like the Battle of the Binary Stars from Discovery or similar to that. But it didn't. It actually ended in classic Star Trek fashion, with them talking it down and then everyone calming down. And Picard made a big impassioned speech and everyone chilled out a bit. And it would be kind of churlish of me to moan about like that kind of stuff because it's basically what I've been complaining they've not been doing all the way through the show. And it's what used to always happen on Trek, as I said, as opposed to these big modern explodes and guns and violence, and there's been a lot of that in the show, but more on that later. But also the best part of the episode, Picard and Data. I mean, I wasn't expecting that at all, partly because the show hasn't mentioned Data other than in passing, like in a while, and then he hasn't actually appeared since episode one's dream sequences, so I didn't think we were going to get to see him. And it was actually genuinely great, not only to see Brent Spiner playing Data and playing him properly, but also getting to actually see these two characters have a proper goodbye. And also giving Brent Spiner a chance to actually say goodbye to the character in a way other than just saying goodbye and then blowing up. I mean, it's nice. And as I said, the pair of them, Data and Picard, getting a final moment together because, as I said, they never actually got that. Now we get that moment of catharsis. And it was genuinely a wee bit sad, especially the bit when he's turning him off slowly, bit by bit, pulling out the things out of the computer. And we actually see Data grow old, and you see, like Picard in the classic uniform, holding his hand as he drifts off. But speaking of drifting off, well, actually, you probably wouldn't fall asleep watching this because your palm would be slapping you in the face every single time something stupid or badly written happened, and that would keep you awake for the whole episode. But where to begin? I mean, right from the offset, things just didn't make much sense, and that's been an issue with this show ever since the beginning. I mean, it's lazy. It's don't think about it writing. And let's start out with plot holes, bad writing, and lazy storytelling. Such as, for example, at the beginning of the episode, we've got Narek, the Chad Romulan, running back to the Borg cube. I mean, the Borg cube that's the size of a building, but didn't actually leave a crater when it crashed into the ground from space. But, part of it's open, and that seems to be where everyone's hanging out. Okay. But why is he even going there? Why isn't he going back to his own ship? I mean, who knows? Who cares? I mean, the show clearly doesn't care.
I don't care!
But genuinely, why is he going there? Does he know that Nerissa, his sister, is on there? I mean, why is she still there? Because last time we actually saw her, she was being attacked by a whole bunch of Borgs and looked like she was getting torn apart. But she got beamed away suddenly, much like she had before when she got attacked by Elnor. Now, maybe I'm crazy, but I assumed that she'd been beamed back onto one of the Romulan ships, the ones that were flying away, but apparently not. Apparently she was beamed somewhere else on the Borg cube. So is this transport something she set up herself? Is it something she can activate? And if so, did she beam herself away when she fell down the big hole, and is she going to come back next season? But there's all these questions. And again, the show says,
I don't care!
Or like the idea that Narek arrives at the Normandy and he can't get in, so they have to let him inside and talk about it. But Eleanor got inside. I mean, how did he get in? I mean, they had that previously before when he got onto the Borg cube and nobody actually knew how, but somehow he managed it. I mean, he's a ninja, which somehow means he's able to beam places he shouldn't be able to. I mean, that makes sense. And the fact that they have time for a nighttime chat. I mean, they literally go camping in the woods or something and sit around a campfire telling ghost stories, but they know that they're under a lot of time pressure and that they're supposed to be attacking to try and save the universe. But no, they've got time to just sit and hang out. It doesn't make sense. And still, they also need this complicated gambit to get back inside the base. Once they're inside the synthetics, they're free to roam around. But at the same time, Jurati and Picard decide to escape, and they escape with absolutely no problem at all. I mean, conveniently, like even though Picard is like a geriatric who can't move that fast and has some kind of space dementia, but the rest all came the same sort of way. So wouldn't they have passed each other? Because it doesn't make it plain that they left at opposite times. In fact, the timing here makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, because in one scene you see Jurati and Picard leaving, the next scene you see the rest of the group hanging out there, and literally the shot after that is Jurati and Picard on the Normandy. So how fast did all these things occur? I mean, the timeline's all over the place. It took the other guys overnight apparently to get all this way, but they can go in 5 seconds. And aren't these same robots like planning to call in their pals who are going to either enslave or exterminate all biological life? So why are they playing along being normal to like the humans? Why aren't they just killing them? I mean, none of it actually makes any sense. In fact, absolutely nothing about the super future robot thing makes any sense at all, because the show doesn't seem to actually know whether they're actually coming to help out the synthetics, to join up with the synthetics, to take them away, or just to come and wipe out all organic life in the universe. And the problem is it means that we don't understand what anyone's actually doing, and they don't seem to act in a way that seems rational because they're all acting in different ways as if they have completely different ideas about what the script says is going on. And Picard's plan, what was his plan? Was he just going to fly up and hover in front of the Romulan fleet like Dustin Hoffman from Outbreak? Topical reference. Or is he trying to do like a Poe Dameron from The Last Jedi? I mean, does he honestly think he's going to be able to reason Commander O out of a lifelong Vash indoctrination? And at the same time, the Orchids. I mean, Picard didn't even count about what the Orchids were going to do. And the Orchids just completely ignore him because why? I mean, is there any reason? Do we know that he's literally, they're right beside him. Why didn't they attack him? And not only that, Narek and Nerissa had a plan to blow those up. I mean, that was why Narek had more grenades.
You're telling me you want to use those grenades to destroy flowers?
Ship-killing flowers that fly.
I mean, this whole plotline just got completely forgotten, but they didn't actually take away the lines. And then speaking of the grenades, I thought you throw grenades. I mean, the grenade magically zooms, and it ends up in Soji's hand. I mean, it's a grenade. Why didn't Rios just throw the grenade at the machine? Or at the antenna? I mean, why didn't he even just go around the other side when they were outside? He didn't actually have to climb over that wall. He could have presumably snuck around the outside and let it zoom up there if that's what it did, and it would have hit the tower, and then that would have sorted everything out. But clearly, again, the show was like,
I don't care!
And the weird Ocarina of Stupid MacGuffin thing. Now, if I'm going to be super charitable, I would say that just maybe Professor Girardi had seen one of these in a lab or something and used it, although I'm pretty sure the show never showed her even looking at, talking about anything like that. So it's just me being completely charitable there. But it's even still a completely universe-breaking piece of stupid. I mean, if the robots can create a doohickey that literally lets them create anything they can imagine, then why aren't they using it to make more orchids, or a giant gun, or something else? I mean, what I don't understand also is why Picard and Girardi imagine a whole bunch of imaginary fake ships that come in with warp signatures. Why don't they imagine just a real set of EMP drones that would like knock out all the Romulan ships or something like that, or anything else? I mean, it's terrible writing even having something like this in the first place anyway, and giving it to characters who don't know what it is and then having them instantly able to use it just magically. And the reason you don't do something like this is because it's terrible, because it's just broken the show and the universe by giving somebody what's basically an anything device. I mean, it literally does anything. Now, that's how children write stories. That's not how adults write stories. I mean, that's like a kid getting to the bit in the story where it's hard, so then suddenly somebody found a magic wand or a genie's lamp. And then, just it's basically a mini Deus Ex Machina that just allows them to just get past whatever the problem is in a MacGuffin. I mean, another example of similar type of bad writing is how Picard can suddenly fly the ship, even though he didn't have the foggiest how to do that only 2 episodes ago.
Actually, I don't know how to work this.
I mean, that was something they didn't even need to do. They didn't even need to have that bit in the show in the previous episode. I mean, think about how bad that lack of planning is. If they knew at this point that Picard was going to fly the ship in this episode, why did they make a point of him not being able to fly it 2 episodes ago? It was only a throwaway joke anyway. It's not even a Chekhov's gun. It's like a Chekhov's damp squid. It's going into a story and creating a situation that you know you're going to have to reverse 2 episodes later. And I know that he spoke to the Admiral, but you're saying that speaking to the Admiral for 5 minutes managed to revoke a Federation-wide synthetic ban completely in the space of 1 single phone call.
Shut the fuck up.
And this is the same wifey who earlier on was like, I'm not having anything to do with you and your nonsense at all. And then a few days later, he's like, yeah, I've got a robot. So she's like, cool, whatever. Robots are our friends now. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And as if the horror wasn't complete, there's a skybeam. I mean, it's not like people aren't sick of skybeams already, and it wasn't already a tired cliche. I mean, it's in so many movies, it's just ridiculous at this point. But not only that, it's literally the Avengers Assemble skybeam, where like turning it off will stop the bad guys because they just wriggle back into their space hole. And these future magic space robots who said, contact us and we'll come and we'll kill off organics and free you or something. Now, here's the thing. I know everyone, or a lot of people at least, don't like that film. But remember Batman vs Superman and what Lex Luthor says at the end of it.
But a bill cannot be wrong. He's hungry. He's found us. And he's coming!
You can contact the faraway bads, but even if you turn and close the door, they still know that you're there, and they're probably still coming, even if it takes a while. I mean, this isn't new. This is literally part of the story of one of the early episodes of The Next Generation, because Q manages to zoom the Enterprise off, and they first meet the Borg. And even once they go back, they realise that the Borg still know they exist now and will eventually be coming for them. I mean, but in this show, it's just like, now we've shut it off, I'm sure it'll all be fine now. And then Picard's space dementia, it kicks in now, just in time for him to die. And then, they don't bother beaming him to the med bay of the ship. No, they don't even beam him to the med bay of
the toughest, fastest, most powerful ship Starfleet has ever put into service.
Where his old mate is captain. No. Instead, they beam him onto a concrete plinth in the middle of the town square in a city full of robots, where, as far as we've been told, there are actually no medical doctors. All we've got are like a couple of robot scientists. And the only reason that happens is so that he can have the crew who are already on the planet cluster around him and cry as he dies. The crew of people who he barely knows and the audience doesn't really care about. And it's also so they can kill him off in a cheap death scene, but then bring him back 5 minutes later. Now where did I see that happen a lot recently? Oh yeah. And then they arbitrarily choose to handicap his robot body so that they don't have to write around the fact that Patrick Stewart is an old man who's getting a wee bit feeble and can't do the action scenes and running anymore. I mean, that actually bothered me more because for a brief second, I had the notion that they might have gotten Tom Hardy back again to be young Picard, like he was in Star Trek Nemesis. And that would have actually been really interesting, to have the old Picard mind being played by this younger actor, with supposedly a robot body. I mean, that would have made an interesting idea for an ongoing show. But no, it was just a cheap death and a reversal. I mean, it's not only bad, it's pathetic, especially when they don't actually need to do it in the first place. I mean, put it this way, now I'm not trying to write the show for them, but what if they just had the synthetics say, we invented a bit of an artificial positronic but organic brain that we've made, like how we've made these people, and we can replace the part of your brain that has that thing. And it'll do exactly the same thing, and it'll work out fine for you. And then you could also, them implanting that into him after he maybe almost died, they could have still had the bit with him meeting Data in the construct, because the part of his brain that was connected to the computer. I mean, there you go, problem solved, and you don't have the stupid robot body thing. But it's weak and bad writing. And then not to mention the fact that the end of this is literally a complete lift from the movie Serenity. I mean, think about it, right? The last couple of shots of this, literally the end of Serenity. And for some reason, like after knowing each other for only 5 minutes, Raffi and Seven have just fallen in love. I mean, now with Raffi, all we actually know about her is she has a son from a previous relationship. But as far as we know, Seven was more or less always shown as straight in Voyager. Now fine, okay, so when she was off being a space ranger, she embraced her inner bisexuality. Fine, okay, that's not a problem. I mean, they actually hinted about that earlier in the show with her and Vajazzle, so that's fine. But it does seem like an incredibly 2019 thing to do, to make the two strong female tough women characters not only queer, but now turning them into a power couple. I mean, give me strength, they only met for 5 minutes. But at least now we understand why there was that line about Raffi being all like,
I admire what you do out there.
But speaking of Raffi, I mean, this week she was back to be crap comic relief again and spent the whole time telling everyone what to do, which leads to the next problem. Inconsistent and idiotic characters. Everybody in this show is an idiot. I mean, there's a trope called the idiot plot, and that's where the plot of a story is just plain stupid. And I'd like to come up with something a little further, which is the classic thing that I've mentioned in other show reviews, and it's that situation that let's call the Kurtzman-Chabon effect in honour of this show and Discovery. So what's the Kurtzman-Chabon effect? It's when stupid, unimaginative people try to write clever characters. And you've seen this before. You've seen it in a film or a show where there's an evil genius or a big baddie who has a clever plan, and then halfway through the plan, you figure out exactly what it was, even though the film's got ages to go and the other characters haven't, because they're all stupid. And even though this guy is supposed to be super clever, it's actually just a crap, stupid plan. And that's what this is. It's a stupid person's idea of clever. And that's what this show does, week in, week out, for every character. I mean, this is a show with super intelligent robots who can't think straight enough to actually have plans that aren't full of obvious holes that a child would work out. And you've got Picard, who's basically a shell of himself, and even if that was the whole point of the show, he doesn't act in any way like the character from the old shows, and nothing he does suggests the years of experience he's supposed to have in not only politics, but in people management, and in, just basically running a spaceship. I mean, he just gives up the reins to absolutely anyone who wants him at this point, and acts like a dottery old man, and spends the entire time basically being told off by Raffi. And Raffi's a character that just makes no sense. She's a character that clearly the writers think that the audience love and care about. And I've said this before, she's like Clara from Doctor Who. It's somebody with almost zero backstory, like building her up properly. And basically, in this case, they've just made her irritating and clownish. But then also, they cast somebody completely wrong who comes off as very amateurish or at least really uncomfortable in delivery, because I think they're playing her against type, and she's just not good at this. And on top of this acting, The character is utterly, completely insufferable. I mean, this is a show with a lot of insufferable characters, and yet the show seems to be labouring under the misapprehension that people like Raffi, and we care about her because because she had a bit of a sob story about getting fired, and then because there was a scene of her son not really liking her because she was a weird conspiracy nut. And then you've got Rios, and he feels like a crap pastiche of a swathe of other similar characters from other sci-fi shows and movies, and the show really doesn't know what to do with him at any point in the story. But, give him a half-hearted backstory about a dead captain, and then, well, he's just lost the second one. He even talks about it.
Never again let another self-righteous, hard-assed old starship captain into my heart. Never again have to stand there and watch him die.
Well done. But I'm sure he won't be broken by this even more, because that would be hard to write, and this show does not do hard to write. It'll all be forgotten next season. And then there's Seven. Now, Seven used to be a logical, clever scientist, but now she's like a hard-drinking, kung-fu fighting space cowboy woman who does all her thinking with her fists. I mean, I think that's what the people who made this show like. I mean, let's be honest, she's basically Nan from Discovery, or like Zoe from Firefly. And the sad thing is, as I said, so much in this feels like a lift from other shows, better shows. Although the one show, ironically, they don't seem to be lifting from in a sensible way is Star Trek. And the real tragedy here is Picard is a show that was supposed to be about an aging captain realising he'd forgotten the reasons he used to fight for what was right and yank himself out of a stupor to rekindle the fire in his life and protect a young woman. Is it just me, or does that all sound a little bit familiar? I mean, it's the plot of Logan. It's also the plot of The Last Jedi, and now it's the plot of Picard. I mean, I'm not kidding. It actually feels like this is maybe the story of our times. It seems to be like the tale of a father figure who failed, and how only meeting a young girl and her idealism manages to bring him up the idea that he should sacrifice himself to save her and save all the things that he could have stopped earlier if he hadn't already given up. I mean, I'm being honest here. I'm not actually trying to be silly. Like, maybe America is so pissed off about Trump and stuff like that they just can't help themselves but lash out and deal with this angst by telling stories about crap dads and how the people who run you in the governments are just terrible and need to be told off and basically fought against every step. I mean, maybe that's just me. Or maybe it's something to do with the guys in charge of this show. Because we've got Alex Kurtzman, who's well known for churning out cheap, cash-in, functional, but kind of artless movies. And they're basically products. They're not even movies, they're products. And then you've got Michael Chabon, who's a novelist. I mean, he's not actually a TV writer, he's a novelist. He's done a couple of film scripts. Most of them are terrible. But he's more known for writing books. And in the books, there's always recurrent themes about failed fathers and divorce and abandonment. And a lot of stuff about the mistreatment of the Jewish community in America. Now, you don't have to look very hard to see each of those things and how they fit into the story of Picard. And I don't entirely blame the pair of them or any of the other writers. I mean, it's no secret that Picard had a lot of production problems. It was meant to be a 13-episode show, and that got dropped down to 10. And apparently there was a lot of reshoots and restructuring of the show, and a lot of the ideas got binned halfway and reworked into different areas, and it's a bit of a mess as a result. But the sad thing is Picard was meant to be this beautiful swan song where we'd see this character reflect on his life and his choices. And instead, what we got was a kind of tired, dawdled old man in Picard pajamas. And he was running around with a generic crew of space pirate cliches in a messy story that rarely makes sense, hardly bothers connect, and pulls in so many different directions at the same time that it ends up feeling like a horribly trite disaster of a narrative. And it only really works if you completely turn your brain off and just look at the pretty colours. And it's a really sad place for something like Star Trek to have gotten to after 50-odd years, and a really shameful squandering of so many great actors and crew on a script that, frankly, comes across as if it was written by half-wits and greenlit by really greedy money men who didn't care. It could have been so much more. And if they do a second season, it'll need to be a completely different beast, because if it isn't, then, and it's not a huge sea change with a proper story and at least a competent idea, then I certainly won't be watching it. I doubt many other people will as well. But yeah, that's it. That's Picard over. So thanks for coming with me on this adventure. Till next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.